Hello everyone. Our group will be reviewing case study number 4, Retailing IT for at-Books kiosks.
Case summary and scope. So our team chose case studies number 4, the Retailing IT and at-Books kiosk. This project entailed the establishment of a new type of bookstore in various locations. Now, this bookstore came with a little bit of a twist on your normal bookstore that you would see, because the requirement for this bookstore was that it was going to be automated and available for customers to access 24 hours a day. The idea was that this bookstore would be in locations that require people to be coming and going during off-peak hours. So think transit stations, airports, train stations. And the idea was to not have staff on site to assist customers. The bookstores they would operate was they would issue special entry cards to customers that would allow them to access the bookstores, find the book they desired, and then check out using a credit card to buy their book, all without employee assistance. So the setup of the team structure for this project can be seen here on our slide. It consisted of 6 outsourced teams. At the head of these teams is the program management office that is located in New York. Then we have the design company located in Berlin, construction company in Beijing, finance company in London, marketing company in Singapore, and the IT company located in India. So the design company is responsible for the interior design and layout of the bookstores. It was required to be uniform between stores, prefabricated, and appealing to the customers. The construction company was required to build the physical locations of the bookstores within the requirements that were detailed in the project scope. The finance company was required to plan a finance plan and receive payback for the bookstore's options within 12 months of opening. They were also required to acquire the necessary funding to build and install and stock the bookstores. The marketing company was required to develop the brand name for the bookstore to include planning and marketing strategy and logo for the company. The project management team was required to develop the maintenance, restocking, special orders, training, rental, insurance for the bookstores, as well as oversee and manage all of the other teams. The IT team was set up a little bit differently since this project was very IT heavy, because it was a difficult task to, create the unstaffed bookstores and have the entire process be automated. So it was broken down into multiple teams. The first team was assigned to create the software that controlled the key cards. Those key cards allowed the customers to access the bookstores. It also helped them purchase the books. The second team in the IT section was assigned to create the software for the in-store kiosks. These kiosks are where customers would go to look up what book they would want to purchase and be able to find where it is located within the store. The third team for the IT section was designed to develop the automated checkout process for the customers to buy books. They would be able to do this process using either their credit cards or the key cards. Team 4 for IT developed the software to assist the restocking process for the bookstore. The software for restocking focused on tracking the sales from each location, reporting them to a central location, which then determined which book needed to be restocked and where. And the last team for IT developed the software that allowed customers to process special orders. So if they wanted a book that was not in stock at a certain location, they would be able to use the kiosks in the store and then process this special order and have it sent to their house. The scope that we were given for the at-Books kiosk project was pretty strict. Overall, we were given a 12-month timeline from start to finish for the project. That means that all the construction, all the planning, the software, and everything that goes into this project had to be finished within 12 months, and that meant us opening the store within that time frame. Overall, we were told that we would have to open 6 stores in total. The locations for these stores were London, Sao Paulo, Dubai, Singapore, Beijing, and New York. And then we were also given a budget for this project. The budget was $2 million, and all of the contracts associated with this project are cost plus, which means that we would have to pay attention very closely to how much money we're spending and all of the contracts associated with the project.
So as an overview for this project, our group went through the planning phase of the At-Books Kiosk project and completed 4 major deliverables, including the stakeholder analysis, communication, and register, which we used to identify stakeholders from all of the organizations involved in the project, establish if they are critical or non-critical, and active or passive stakeholders, and align communication needs per each stakeholder. Next was the work breakdown structure, or WBS, where we went through and listed all project tasks and relationships between the tasks for all 6 functional teams for clarity. Following that, we established the project cost and estimate at completion, or EAC, leveraging the project WBS, where we used each task to project the budget for each step and leveraged the known or projected manpower rates and hours for each budget estimate to maintain the $2 million project budget cap. Finally, we went through the project risk register, where we used this format to identify potential risks for each of the 6 functional teams. We rated and identified trigger events, mitigation plans, and risk tolerance for each risk. We will be reviewing these in the following slides. So the stakeholder analysis and communication register is set up and used by the project team to identify stakeholders from all organizations involved in the project and used to figure their engagement level and communication needs per stakeholder. Our register is broken down by stakeholders per organization involved in the project, which would include the customer company At-Books, project management company from New York, IT software company from India, design company of Berlin, construction company in Beijing, finance company of London, and marketing company of Singapore. Local politicians and interest groups are also included and listed as stakeholders within this register. Most of the company stakeholders per organization include the CEOs, sponsors, project managers, division managers, resource managers, and project teams per location, though depending on the company, there may be a few more stakeholders included in this register. You'll see below here a portion of our project stakeholder analysis and communication register, where we have stakeholders' names and titles, as well as the organization they work from identified. We have scored each stakeholder by their power and involvement within the project, as well as a multiplicative ranking for how crucial the stakeholders' engagement in the project is for the team. Whether or not the stakeholder is critical or non-critical for if their involvement has a fundamental impact on the project's performance. Whether or not the stakeholder has a active or passive management within the project, or if they're directly involved in ongoing activities. Each stakeholder's communication needs, be that daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly reports on project progress, and action plans for how and when the team members are to escalate to these stakeholders. The next deliverable being discussed is the project work breakdown structure, or WBS. We broke this WBS down into the 6 different functional team activities supporting the project, so we had a clarity of task division. This WBS allows the project teams to understand and follow the interconnected tasks, being it a predecessor or successor, and establish the project's critical path. Most importantly, this WBS can be used to track the progression of the project in real time and be used to identify any potential timing issues or slippage that would put the project schedule at risk. First up on the WBS is the design team. Their tasks were grouped into 2 main assignments, including the building design plan and the interior design plan. Within the building design plan, the design team had to coordinate with the project management team to confirm specific requirements and schedules. They're working with the construction team on creating building plans, reviewing and approving those drawings as well, participating in construction IPRs to assess their building designs, finally participating in final site inspections on the construction. Within their interior design plan tasks, these steps included creating the actual interior design plans, getting final approval from the customers, and creating design schedules, estimating the cost for this design and feeding that to the finance team for approvals, ordering the actual materials, supporting the construction team within each location, leading a final design walkthrough with project management, complete cleanup, as well as coordinating project closeout with the project management team.
So the construction portion of the WBS starts with a lot of upfront work that includes requesting permits for all 6 locations, working, alongside the local governments to make sure that they're adhering to all construction guidance. They've made sure, they've crossed all their T's, they've dotted their I's. They have everything in place to go ahead and get started with the work once they're able to do so. They also get together and they review the specific requirements and schedule that were delivered from the project management team. And then they move to go ahead and work alongside the design team to create a building plan for the locations. Once they've completed this, they go ahead and they review and approve the engineering drawings associated with this plan. After they have the engineering drawings done, they're able to come up with a cost estimate and send that over to the finance team. So once they send that over to the finance team, the cost analysis also goes to the program management team and it gets their approval. Then they move on to more planning ahead of the construction phases. They order all necessary materials and send them to the construction sites so they can be prepped for construction. They also coordinate with local companies to order all the construction equipment that they will need to complete the construction. They also work alongside other local companies to hire all construction workers for all 6 locations. And then depending on what type of workers they get and their experience level, they may have to provide some training to these workers. If all the workers are seasoned, they still want to get together with the workers and kind of tell them about the scope of the project and make sure everyone's on the same page before construction begins. So at this point, they're ready to start the 4 phases of construction that we have laid out in our WBS. Construction phase 1 consists of demolition and structure changes. This means, taking down walls as necessary, reorganizing things on the inside, prepping with the layout as the design team and the construction team has set forward within their engineering drawings. At the end of construction phase 1, they coordinate a site visit and an inspection with their leadership and the program management team to make sure that everything they've done within phase 1 is on track and adhering to the plans. Then they go ahead and move to construction phase 2, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. This means setting up new lighting, redoing the bathrooms. Mechanical, this means, installing the kiosks. Anything associated with the bookstore that falls into these categories would be installed during this stage of the project. And then, just like in the first phase, they move on to have an inspection with leadership and program management again. So then they move on to phase 3 of construction, which is the interior and the design build. This means that they are, installing the carpet at this phase. They are designing bookshelves. They're installing desks, anything that would be necessary for the overall design of the building. And then again, they do the inspection with the program management office and leadership. And then this leads us to the final phase of construction, which is the finishes and the cleanup. This means we're removing any unnecessary building materials that were left behind, making sure that everything looks, clean, coherent, so that way the design team will be able to move in soon and put on the finishing touches to these bookstores. And then the construction part of the project is closed out with a final site inspection, which includes a safety inspection. They have the safety inspector walk through, make sure everything's up to code, which may look different depending on what country they're in. And then after that final site inspection, they coordinate the project closeout with the program management office to make sure, they've done everything they need to as a team and they're ready to just close out the contract.
The financial team's WBS is broken down into 6 main group tasks for this project. First being the financial risk assessment, in which the financial team evaluates exchange, interest rate, tax rate risks, and other potential financial risks that may impede the success of this project. Next up would be the overall project information assembly and approval, in which the financial team would accept the other functional team's budget information, compile it into one project budget, assess, review, and push for customer approval. The next three tasks are investor, bank, institution, and investment insurance assessment and selection, in which the financial team would go through and assess potential suppliers or investors for this project, meet with them, review and rank each of the potential suppliers on this, provide a suggestion to the customer, get customer approval, and then work through the legal contracts for this project. Throughout the project, the financial team would also be conducting project cost monitoring, which they would be reviewing and approving expenditure requests from other functional team, track those expenditures against each team's budget, and prepare monthly financial reporting for status and tracking against the project budget. Another important task would be for project change impact tracking on the budget, where other functional teams would put forth a project scope change. The financial team would assess that change against the budget, how much it would cost, get a change in scope, document an action plan established, and push for customer review and approval for the new changed scope. Finally, the project team would also be in charge of putting together and conducting budgetary performance assessments every quarter. The marketing team's WBS structure is grouped into 5 main tasks, including research, where the team would identify different platforms, competitors, logos, and rebranding options for this project. Planning, which includes developing different forms of communication, identifying the main target audience, and picking a platform to implement the marketing strategy on. Creation, which is consisting of creating a landing page, identifying different ways of advertising, creating the new logo for this project, picking the rebranding option, and creating marketing emails. Finalizing includes meeting the program management team about new marketing changes and getting approvals from the team and the customer. Finally, publishing would consist of transitioning to the new market platform, sending emails out to the targeted audience, setting up adverts, as well as sending up follow-up emails.
So the project management portion of the WBS has 6 main high-level tasks that the project management team has to accomplish. This includes the coordination of other teams, renting the bookstore locations, developing the operating system that the bookstore is going to use, getting the supplies that are needed in the bookstore, establishing all internal training, and then setting up a process for special orders. And some of these have to happen really fast in order for the project to get off the ground running. And we only have the 12-month time frame, so it's very important that the project management team gets started immediately at project initiation. So for the coordination of other teams, the project management team must develop all project requirements at a high level. Then they're going to move on to develop team-specific requirements. They're also on the hook to hire the outsourced teams or complete all contracts associated with the outsourced teams. Once they have this complete, they're also going to develop the integrated schedule for each project team. And the project teams are going to use this schedule to go by for the rest of the project. So it's very important that they do this up front. After they have that schedule developed and the teams have been hired, the project management team is then going to meet with each team to discuss their requirements and the schedule. After that, they're going to establish monthly in-process reviews with each team just to manage progress, make sure everyone's on track, they're within scope, and that none of the timelines have shifted. Also, as part of the coordination of other teams, they're going to be kind of doing some oversight of the teams. This includes the 4 construction site visits, as well as the closeout for all the teams at the end of their project when they're wrapping everything up. For the bookstore locations, the project management team is going to have to identify locations for all 6 bookstores. This means, breaking out your Zillow app and looking to see what's available in each area and then going ahead and moving forward with processing the rental agreements after that. This is very important for them to do up front because, the construction and the design team can't really get started until after they know what spaces they're going to be in so they can make their plans. After they've completed the rental agreements, they're going to have to move forward with getting insurance for each location and then finalizing the insurance for that location and then working with the finance team to make sure that this is on the books. After that, they're going to move on to developing the operating system that's going to be used for the operation and stocking of the bookstores. This means creating a project development team, hiring the people who are going to be on this project development team, the software engineers. They're also going to have to create a plan for developing the software, as well as a timeline that will be used. Then the project development team is going to move forward with creating the system. And then during this process, we're going to have the project management team holding weekly in-process reviews with the project development team to make sure that they're on track and they're adhering to the schedule. Once the software has been developed, they're going to move on to testing the operating system. And then after test has been completed, we've left some time in there for them to incorporate any comments or bug fixes that are necessary to get this software up and running. After that's complete, they're going to deliver the operating system. And then after the operating system has been delivered, they're going to establish a maintenance plan for the operating system. This entails doing all of your necessary updates. And then after that, they're going to hire a maintenance team that will perform these updates. And then the maintenance team is going to develop a plan, kind of like a plan for them to go out and update the software as it's in use. After the operating system has been developed, the next task is to get supplies for the bookstore. So the project management team is going to have to research book suppliers in the area for each country, make sure that they have everything necessary in stock, all the bestsellers. They're then going to go ahead and meet with these potential suppliers. After the meeting and they've established they are going to be purchasing from them, they're going to go ahead and coordinate the initial stock with the suppliers. Then the project management team is going to meet with suppliers regarding their restocking plan. And then once everyone agrees to the restocking plan, they will move forward with finalizing the restocking plan to make sure that once we open and purchases have been made, that we can keep books on the shelves. The next task for the project management team is going to be establishing all internal training. This means, going out and hiring a training team, having the training team research the online training tools that they will utilize to give the training. They will then create a training plan for all needed processes, getting out to customers how to use the key cards, how to set it up, that kind of thing is very important. So that way people know how to use the new technology that's being introduced by the company. After they've created these training plans, they're going to move on to finalizing the training plans. Then they're going to coordinate monthly training with all departments, identify any departments that need training, and then make sure that the employees get this training. They're also going to establish a new hire training plan with each department to make sure that when personnel do onboard, they get the training that they need. Then, prior to opening, they're going to start the new hire training classes just to make sure everything gets up and running smoothly before opening day. And then the last task that the project management team is going to complete is the special order processing. So this entails, establishing a process for all special orders. So that way, when the customer gets to the bookstore and they don't find the specific book that they want, they're still able to go onto the kiosk and place that order to their house. So once they've established this process, they're going to coordinate the process with their suppliers to make sure that once they get this order, that the suppliers are going to be able to send it to the customer's house. And then afterwards, they're going to create training for the special orders. So that way the customers know how to use the kiosk for special orders.
The IT team's WBS is rather involved and includes 3 major group tasks and many individualized tasks. The first task for the IT team is to establish the software scope and architecture document for the store's search capability, automated checkout capability, inventory tracking, and home delivery request software, as well as develop the IT project budget and get it approved with program management and the customer. Additionally, the team will have to investigate additional servers to support the project, go through RFQs, assess server options, source through suppliers, oversee and troubleshoot the installation of these additional servers. The IT team will also have to put together the hardware requirements for the in-store kiosks, the badging, swipes, and anything additionally identified. They have to RFQ these, review and assess the options, source through suppliers, and oversee and troubleshoot the installation of the hardware in store locations. The more involved side of this is the IT team's requirement to develop the interface designs for the kiosk and mobile interfaces, review these with the supplier, with the customer, and get approval. The IT team will also have to establish the networking hardware requirements per store location, coordinate this with the construction leads, oversee and troubleshoot the networking and kiosk hardware install in each location. The IT team will also be required to develop the customer inventory library database for the books, establish the interface software for the book inventory tracking and management with any supplier clients, and review this with the supplier and the customer for approval. IT team will also have to develop a client member list database that would drive the ID badge logins, establish client login authentication confirmation software, and the membership interface tracking and management software correlated to any supplier clients and get that approved by the customer. IT team will also be working with the home delivery software to connect to the supplier's software and get agreement from the supplier and the customer in each city. IT team will be leading integration with the merchant services client software at the kiosk for checkout functions. And their main task will be to beta launch all of their interface software's database tracking and management and hardware before the project is complete or ready to go in each of these store locations. Any troubleshooting that will need to occur throughout the beta launch and corrective actions to address any issues found for undesirable influence or performance. Review and assess the beta launches with the customer for approval, and once that's approved, release and launch the software and databases at each store location.
So for project cost and estimate at completion, EAC, what we did was we divided it into 6 departments. Those departments were design, construction, finance, marketing, project management, and IT. From there, we determined our budget being $2 million, and then after that, we determined the roles and the responsibilities within each department, identifying the pay that would be distributed between the 6 departments as well. So the first department is design, and what design is responsible for is addressing the design and physical layout of the app books. One recommendation that we had was to ensure that the design was eye-catching, consistent, and prefabricated. The project cost for design would include expenses related to designing the project, such as hiring a designer, purchasing design software, and other design-related costs. The EAC for design would estimate the total cost of completing the design phase, considering the progress made so far and any expected changes or challenges in the future. As you can see in our figure we have in this slide, we have all the information about what would be going on, the hourly pay, how many hours they were working, and then we also have the total of how much it came out to be. The second department that we took into account was construction, and this was a huge department because it did require a lot. This is where the majority of the budget was allocated to, and what they were responsible for was addressing the construction of ad books and ensuring that the requirements were met. So the project cost for construction would encompass all the expenses associated with the actual building or construction work. So this would be materials, labor, equipment, permits, and so on. The EAC for construction would estimate the total cost of completing the construction phase based on the actual costs incurred and the project expenses for the remaining work. As well as the previous slide, we have attached the expenses and just the breakdown cost of everything. And so you can see how much we allocated for construction and then how much was actually spent at the end of the project. Finance is the next one, and this area is in charge of developing a scheme for the new scheme to pay for the new expansion that we are doing, as well as achieving a payback within 12 months after operations begin. And then another thing to include is that they are also in charge of raising funds for building, installing, and restocking books. The project costs for finance involved expenses related to financial activities that were correlated to the project. So this would be hiring financial experts, conducting market research, and implementing financial systems, as well as other things. The EAC for finance would estimate the total cost of completing the finance-related task. And so, just like the previous ones that I've mentioned, we also have just the breakdown of how finance would look and all the things that went into it, along with the pay, the hours that would be working, and then the overall budget allocated for it and what we actually spent. Marketing. So for marketing, it played a significant role in this project due to the many benefits it brought. This area mainly focused on developing a marketing plan for book, as well as the logo and the marketing and the brand image. And the reason why is because we want to catch customers' attention. We want to create a big population that we're able to target. And then the project costs for marketing would include expenses associated with prompting the project, such as advertising, creating marketing materials, hiring marketing professionals, as well as conducting market research and any other marketing-related costs. The EAC for marketing would estimate the total cost of completing the marketing phase, as well as the actual costs incurred and the projected expenses for the remaining marketing activities. And so, as you can see, I have just the breakdown of how many days it would take, and then what would be done, as well as the number of employees, hours and days, and the base rate. And then top right corner, you can see how much was spent and then the allocated budget for it. So for project management, this was another department. Their responsibility is creating a system operation as well as stocking books. And what goes into stocking would be maintaining it, handling special orders, and training. And then for the project costs, it would involve expenses related to managing and overseeing the project. So this would be hiring a project manager, administrative costs, any tools or training that would be needed. The EAC for project management would estimate the total cost of completing the project management task based on the actual costs incurred and the projected expenses for the remaining project management activities. And so with this one, we did go a little bit over the budget that was given to the department, but we didn't go over the actual overall budget, the $2 million budget. So whatever was allocated to them, we did go a little over, but because we did have leftover funds from the other departments, we were able to pull some from there and put it towards project management. And then for our last department, it is information technology, also known as IT. So this area is responsible for the software along with the in-store search, automated checkouts, inventory, home delivery, and integration with the company's existing software platforms. And so the project costs for IT would encompass expenses associated with the implementation and maintenance of the IT systems or the software projects that we are using, such as hardware, software licenses, IT staff salaries, training, and any other IT-related costs. The EAC for IT would estimate the total cost of completing the IT task, and this would consider the expenses incurred so far and the projected expenses for the remaining IT-related work. And as you can see, I have another layout of IT overall, and this one was a little lengthier just because there were a lot of things that we had to do within this department, such as just ensuring that we had someone there to help with in-store search, the checkouts, inventory, and then merging the company's software with the new software that might be used.
The next deliverable being discussed for this project is within risk management, and it's the risk register. This is a log put together to document the top project risks that could impact the success of the project overall. At the bottom of the slide, you can see a snippet of our project's risk register. To the left side, you can see that the risks are identified as well as which stakeholder is responsible. Additionally, the risks are scored based on 0 to 1 on their probability and impact should they occur, as well as a multiplier to rank how severe this risk would be. We list the trigger events for each risk for the project team to track and watch for should the risk become realized. We also classify risks as active or passive within project stakeholders' control, document the aligned risk response, either avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept, estimate the risk cost impact on the project should the risk become realized, as well as any assumptions the stakeholders or project teams made constructing this risk register. We broke up our risk register into the 6 functional teams to carry through the structure from our WBS and EAC documentation. We chose to identify the top 10 risks for each functional team.
So for risk management and risk register, I had design and marketing. So I'll start with design, and then I'll talk about marketing later on after Sarah and Marissa go over their areas. And so for the design, it highlights several challenges and issues that can arise during the design phase of the project. And so I had 10 of them, but I'm just gonna speak about a few. And so the first one would be inadequate user research. And with this, there could be an insufficient understanding of user needs and preferences, leading to design decisions that may not meet user expectations. Another one would be the lack of stakeholder involvement. So this means limited engagement with stakeholders, resulting in designs that may not align with their expectations or organizational goals. And the last one I would like to discuss about would be the budget constraints, meaning budget cuts, inaccurate cost estimation, or unforeseen expenses that force designers to compromise on resources and affect the final design outcome. And so even though we had all these risks that we had put down just to be aware of, we also came up with solutions for them or alternatives for them. And so I think the biggest thing was each of these challenges required specific actions to mitigate their impact, such as conducting thorough research, performing compatibility testing, implementing change in the management processes, as well as engaging stakeholders, investing in training, and much more.
So for the risk associated with the construction team, we've identified 10 here that range from likely to happen to less likely to happen. So we start with risks like permit not approved, construction budget not approved, there's a delay in materials, and then we move down to less likely to happen, like global weather disaster occurs at one of the construction site. This would delay the construction process. And then also accident occurs at the construction site. So for each of these, we kind of give, whether it's active or passive, and then how we would mitigate that risk. So for an example, for the permits not being approved, this might be triggered if the local governments deny the permit request for each location for us to start construction. So we would say this is an active risk. The construction team should be monitoring this to make sure that it doesn't happen. It's something that we can prevent. And if it is triggered, they will have to work to mitigate it. We do have the assumption that the construction and project manager will be knowledgeable about the permit request process in each country, and they'll be able to react to any necessary requests for additional information. So it's very important that they know the local government and make sure that the permits are not going to get denied. And then for another example, for construction risk, just looking at, the possibility of an accident occurring at the construction site. So this would happen, if some building material collapsed onto someone. And obviously, this is active. The construction team should always be practicing all necessary safety measures and be on the lookout for any hazards. And then instead of mitigating, we're going to want to avoid this one. We're going to appoint personnel to be the safety monitors at the construction site. They're always going to be on the lookout for any unsafe working conditions and making sure that, there's communication with management of any unsafe practices that could be happening. So that way we would just completely avoid triggering this risk.
For the financial team's risk register, the majority of the identified risks are outside of the financial team's control. However, we still note these as they have a large impact on the project should they be realized. Some of these would include a change to the exchange rate, interest rate, tax rate, or inflation rate in any of the countries that this globalized and outsourced project is participating in. Additionally, if one of the banks that we are using in our project defaults, that is a risk that we would like to avoid, but it is not within our team's control. A global financial crisis is also one of those risks that we passively monitor, attempt to avoid, but work to mitigate the impacts should it come about. If the overall project budget is not approved, that is a risk that our team, with the financial and project management team, can actively work to mitigate, as well as the delay for money transfer into accounts from any investors. Our team can work hand in hand with the investors and the banks to ensure that there's no delay in money transfer, therefore no delay on any project steps that would be reliant on the money being in the account to work from. A risk that we would look to avoid and mitigate as much as possible is if investors decide to back out of or cancel the funding agreement for the project. Some of these would be able to be mitigated or provide a heads up. However, if an investor defaults or if there is a sudden illness or death, that is an unavoidable consequence, and our financial team would work to absorb that impact and pivot to find additional or secondary investors. The last risk noted on our risk register is a lack of communication between project teams causing a delay in project cost tracking. This one is easily mitigated through regular communication and meetings between the cross-functional teams so that the financial team has the ability to track any scope changes or impacts to project cost and be able to report if the functional teams are under or overutilizing their budget as the project progresses.
So for the marketing part, this one also, we were able to identify key challenges and issues that may arise when it comes to marketing's efforts. And so I'm just going to list a few, and then as you can see, we have a breakdown of all the different kinds of marketing challenges that we were able to identify, as well as how we would respond to them. And so the first one would be brand reputation damage. This meaning issues such as product recalls, customer service failures, or any public relation issues that negatively impact the brand's reputation. That would be a risk. Another risk would be insufficient marketing budget due to budget cuts, like I mentioned earlier when it came to design. That can be the same thing when it comes to marketing and any of the other departments as well. It's just not having enough money to make sure that our department is set. And then the last one I would like to mention would be marketing talent shortage. And so this is where a lot of challenges are foreseen, is when we are unable to recruit or retain skilled marketers, as well as maybe there being high turnover rates or difficulty adapting to rapidly changing market technologies. And so to counteract these risks, we said we would be able to address these challenges through conducting thorough research, monitoring and managing brand reputation, as well as customer-centric messaging, and investing in talent recruitment and training. And so those were some of the solutions that we could turn to if any of these issues did arise.
The risks that are associated with the project management team, a lot of those are pretty major because they affect not just the project management team, but they affect multiple other teams because the project management team is doing oversight for many of the other teams. And if these risks are triggered, they could affect the entire project. So it's very important to pay attention to these risks. So just looking at some of them, the first one is lack of local talent to hire for teams. Very important, that these teams get off the ground running right ahead. So we definitely want to make sure that there is talent out there for them to hire for the project. Another would be, a delay in finding a location for the bookstores. It's important to get construction up and running right away. So we definitely want to make sure that there are locations for the bookstores. A delay in the operating system development. That's another major one. Can't open the bookstores if you don't have the operator system running. And then just looking down, delays in the initial books being shipped. Can't open the bookstores if you don't have books on the shelves to sell. So that's another really important risk to track. Unable to finalize the restocking plan with suppliers. That's also important. The bookstores won't stay open very long if you don't have a constant supply of books on the shelves. Not able to hire the training team in time. That's also important because you want to make sure your team is trained and up and running in time for the bookstores to open. And then just looking down at a few others, global supply chain disruption. That's definitely one that could be triggered and could affect the supply in the bookstores. Focusing on one of the big ones here, though, is that delay in the operating system development. And that's very important because the operating system takes a while to develop. There's a lot of testing that it has to go through. So this risk is going to be active. The PM must be monitoring it to make sure that it falls within that development time frame and that it's on schedule, because any delay in this could throw off the entire schedule and run the risk of not being able to open in time. This is also one that we want to avoid. We want to avoid any delay in the operating schedule because it's going to throw off the entire rest of the schedule. So whatever they have to do in order to avoid it, utilize overtime hours as necessary, add in additional personnel so that way the work can get accomplished. One of the assumptions is that on the WBS we have that in-process review that's going to be ongoing during the development of the operating system. So this in-process review is going to be tracking all of the milestones that the team is hitting and making sure that they're staying on schedule. And, during these in-process reviews, they're going to be able to track whether the team is getting off schedule and then adjust as necessary in order to keep them on schedule. So it's very important. And then another risk right below that one is the operating system fails test. It's very important that this is also tracked. It's kind of related to the other one, but if we get to that point where the operating system fails test, then it's going to have to go back into rework, which we do not currently have on the schedule. One thing we do have on the schedule, though, under assumptions, is 30 days to incorporate bugs and any comments. So, if it does fail test, we do have some extra time built in the schedule that could be utilized for rework as necessary. But that's another one that we definitely want to avoid because it could throw off the entire project schedule.
The IT team has populated their portion of the risk register with their top 10 risks that would impact their steps or section of the AppBooks Kiosk project. They've noted if there's any delay in the server or in-store kiosk hardware delivery, they would be working with the supplier and delivery suppliers to mitigate or correct that to avoid any potential impact on project schedule for construction or install teams for the hardware. If the hardware is damaged in transit, that is something that is outside of the IT team's control. However, they can work with the delivery supplier as well as the hardware supplier to mitigate any schedule delays to reship undamaged hardware or fix the damaged hardware. If there's any networking capability issues at the store locations that could derail this project, if the kiosks, mobile interface, or any hardware is unable to connect to our network, our IT team would be running compatibility tests and validation during the construction and install process to avoid this risk. If there's any delay from the client approvals on any of our software interfaces, such as with the kiosk or mobile interface, this could also delay the next step in launching or testing, or it would also prompt a redesign which is not included in the schedule and could cause further delay. If we have software capability issues with the ID badge hardware and database, that could prevent customers from signing in or being able to access our kiosk, which would be a poor performance, and our IT team would be working to validate and avoid that risk. If the kiosk is unable to communicate with the merchant services functions, this is an additional risk that our IT team would be looking to collaborate with the merchant services supplier to make sure our network and their network are able to communicate to allow our customers at the kiosk to check out. If there's issues with the software release post-beta phase, that would be on the IT team to go back and look at their corrective actions to make sure that the solutions are robust and have been validated, to make sure that there's no persisting issues that were found in beta phase. And finally, if a software development team leaves or if there's a high level of attrition, that is a risk that we want to avoid. And our IT management team would be looking to passively monitor to ensure that team members are happy and secure within their positions and maintain engagement within this project to not cause knowledge transfer delays.
So for the conclusion, the decision by the major online bookseller to establish physical bookstores known as AppBooks in various locations represents a strategic move to reverse the trend from bricks to clicks and capitalize on the demand for books in high-traffic areas such as airports, train stations, and bus stations. And something that was implemented in was a self-service store that would operate 24/7 and provide customers with a physical version of online shopping experience. And so to ensure the success of this endeavor, multiple departments have been assigned specific responsibilities. The design company is tasked to creating a consistent and visually appealing layout for AppBooks. Construction focuses on building structures that adhere to the requirements of different locations. Finance is responsible for developing a financial scheme to fund the expansion and achieve a payback within 12 months of operation. The marketing department is charged with creating a comprehensive marketing strategy, including the development of a logo and a brand image, as well as having a software team that can divide the work into different areas with assigned leaders. And then when it came to the teams, each team, they were responsible for different things. So it would be like creating in-store kiosk, developing a system for automated checkout, and then just processing special orders. And so those would be for the software team or the IT. And then at the end of it, all of teams report to the project manager, and the project manager, their job is to ensure that the coordination and communication between the two teams is present. And at the end of it, looking at our project and what we've done, it was a successful execution due to just the efficient collaboration between the various teams, effective communication with product customers, and then just timely completion of tasks by the outsource companies as well.